Hello and a very warm welcome back to AFC Newsday for yet another special on your home of Arsenal content. The international break has come to a close and we're back with a mammoth lineup to sink our teeth into a Chelsea preview ahead of Arsenal playing them on Saturday away at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League. Unfortunately, Matty is unable to make today's video due to university commitments, so it's making his second appearance on the channel and a more than capable substitute. It's the great Yeambele. Yeambele, welcome back. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, mate. I'm excited to get back to the Premier League. International breaks are so dull, honestly. I can't take them. Back to the Premier League and a big one. I can't wait, honestly. But great to be back. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. You didn't enjoy Harry Kane scoring a lovely goal, running through at Wembley, rubbing
I
some
don't
more
know how to
salt
feel
into the
about Harry
Italian
Kane.
wounds.
I don't know how to feel about Harry Kane because obviously he's still Tottenham in my eyes, But it was good. You know what? Jude Bellingham, wow, just what a phenomenal player. But they do miss Bukayo Saka. That's the real heartbeat of the team. We all know that. When
Yeah.
he's out, it doesn't look the same.
Yeah, I know. And, I think Ben White would do well in the England side as well. But
That's a
that's
different
another
story.
conversation
That is
for
definitely.
another time. But let's also introduce our second guest. Also making his way to the stage is Art de Roché, one of the Athletics Arsenal writers. And it's a pleasure to say he joins us now. Art, great to have you here. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, and thanks for having me. I hope everyone's doing well on this Thursday afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon now. So yeah, I'm all good. I'm all good.
Great stuff. It's brilliant to have you here. And, I'll bring up the slides in a second. But, I will just ask you because in one of our last videos, of course, we previewed that big game at Manchester City. And I haven't had a chance to get your reaction to that crazy win at the Emirates. What was your overall kind of takeaways from the game? We won't go too far into it, but, a couple of weeks on, how are you feeling after that big win at the Emirates?
Oh, it's still massive because just the way we did it, that it wasn't a fluky win or anything. We matched City, we grew into the game. City had, I said before, City had 30 minutes where they looked good in the first half, but the way we grew into the game and then we started bossing, by the end of the game, we were clearly the better team. And City fans can moan about, we didn't have De Bruyne, we didn't have Rodri. We had injuries too. So I think this was a good statement win for us, but big thing is now to follow it up. You can't beat Man City and not follow up. So we'll get into it in this one, but it's massive, good for us. I hope the boys are still buzzing off it and they're taking some positive energy off it because we're going to need it because it's a big month ahead, of big games for us.
How important was it for Arsenal to beat that Manchester City side when they got the injuries to the likes of De Bruyne, Rodri? How important was it for Arsenal to get that win over them when they're seemingly not at their best if they are going to challenge them for the title?
I think it was massive, mostly because going into that, I guess, weekend, there was a lot of talk about, okay, would Arsenal take a draw or would you prefer to go all out for the win? And in my eyes, you had to approach that game going for 3 points because that's the best, I think, opportunity Manchester City are going to give you to come away from that game with a win. And even though I guess Arsenal were without Bukayo Saka, as Yem said, you could see it was a very kind of strategic way that they approached the game. And I think the momentum, you don't know if that will carry over in 2 weeks on, but I think it's also a similar case with Chelsea because they obviously won a couple games on the bounce, beat Burnley 4-1 just before the break. So they could have been coming into the game similarly kind of buoyed by a very good win. But now both teams maybe have to kind of reset themselves ahead of this weekend, which probably isn't a bad thing because when you look at it as well, Arsenal are a much more settled unit than Chelsea are.
For sure, and I mean Arsenal have not got the best record at Stamford Bridge, and bar last season's 1-0 win, it's always been a tough place to go, even no matter how bad Chelsea are. So I mean let's get straight into it. Great to have you here, Art. Thanks so much for your time. If you are watching, please make sure to subscribe. Drop a like on the video. It'd be great to have you here to stick around for more content here on AFC Newsday. But let's get straight into it. Before we get into Chelsea, Yeah, and we've touched on this with you already, but Art, just to, whilst you're on here for the first time, it would be great to get your thoughts on the season so far. I mean, if you wanted to go through some of these points, but who have some of the standout players been for you this season? I think for me, that man there at the top, Declan Rice, has been huge for Arsenal. And just kind of what have you made of the campaign so far? And if you want to go through some of those points, please do feel free to.
Yeah, I think regarding star performer, Declan Rice is just levels above, because especially when you get to watch him live in the flesh, you really kind of realize how much of a presence he has on that pitch, where he just is able to change moments in games, which is really important because when you look at, say, Arsenal of last season, there were times where they'll just lose the ball in the attacking third and then they get hit on the transition so easily, whereas that doesn't really happen as often. It will happen sometimes, but Declan Rice, the way he covers ground is just ridiculous. And I think in terms of another player that may not, I guess, get mentioned as much, I think Ben White has been flawless, really. Playing at centre back at the start of the season, I think he was okay. Obviously, it wasn't as natural for Arsenal as a collective because of the Thomas Partey role at right back. But then since he's gone back to right back, Ben White, I felt that he's just kind of hit the ground running again. So those would be my, I guess, main two. With the others, it's quite difficult to kind of pinpoint because a lot of players have been in and out of this team, whether it's for tactical reasons like Gabriel or injury issues like Saka, Trossard, Jesus and Martinelli. So yeah, I think the fact that Arsenal are where they are, having to contend with those injuries at the minute, has been a testament to just the squad. In terms of the other points, I think patience is an interesting one because everyone could see this isn't the same Arsenal from last season just yet. It's a lot more, I guess, considered football. It's not as free flowing. And me personally, I'm waiting for the free flowing attack to come back. I'm hoping that would be against Chelsea. But it's almost, yeah, they're gearing up slowly, very slowly. And yeah, you'd hope to kind of get back to something similar to last year where you have those 5 attacking players in the final third at all times, and then sometimes Ben White will add to that. Obviously, fitness will be a kind of major factor with that. So hopefully at some point we'll be able to see the Jesus, Martinelli and Saka front three. And then I think hopefully then you'll be able to see a bit more of the kind of Arsenal of last year. And we got a little sneak preview of that against PSV, I felt. In terms of balance in the league and Champions League, that's another interesting one because I think coming into this season, everybody just expected there to be rotation straight away, but that hasn't been the case. And when you look at how Mikel Arteta used the Europa League, he wasn't really rotating that much in that competition either. So when you go up to a better competition, it's almost maybe expected is the wrong word, but you can see why he's rotating even less. And I think the main thing is, I guess now you're going to have to, I guess, trust the squad a bit more. I felt the Manchester City Community Shield win and the league win, as well as the Fulham game, have probably been the best examples of how he's, I guess, using the bench a little better this year. And you'd want to see a bit more of that, I think. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts, general thoughts so far. I hope I touched on important bits.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, I'm not sure what you guys feel about those.
No, for sure, 100% are. And I think I did just want to touch on your point about balancing the league and the Champions League. And, last season I was fortunate enough to be in some of the press conferences with you at Colney. And I do remember towards the back end of last season, Arteta was asked about, do you think, now you've qualified for the Champions League, your current squad is, good enough to be able to compete on all four fronts next season? And he just straight up said no, like 100% not. And you can see the way they've recruited and kind of promoted and kept players. Like, the squad's in a very different place now, isn't it? There's players that are not really getting any minutes at all, like Emil Smith-Rowe. Reece Nelson's a player that's coming on off the bench, getting a few minutes in rotation. But I mean, for sure. No, it was great to get your insight there and thoughts on that. Yeah, I did want to ask you, because I know we spoke about emotion quite a lot, and I'll get your thoughts on this too. But we spoke about emotion in the Manchester City preview, and how you really have to be focused, switched on, and there's been the whole talk about, are Arsenal too much of an emotional side? Have they let it get the better of them? But that game against Manchester City was really quite mature, wasn't it?
It was massive. It was a massively mature performance in my eyes, because we didn't go gung ho. The previous games against Man City, we've gone man for man. We've gone high press. The Man City game last year at the Etihad, we went high press to try and combat it, and they absolutely tore through us just by one long ball up to Haaland. So I think Arteta and the squad have learned their lesson and said, look, don't go aggressive against City necessarily. You press at the right time. What I noticed was the press was very considered. Martin Odegaard tends to lead the press, to start the press, but he was very considered in how he started that press. And I thought it was a very intelligent performance from a lot of our players. And I think to Art's point, within, about patience needed, we are much more considered in our game plan. And I think that's very deliberate on Mikel's part, because he's realized last season we started guns blazing and we were absolutely dominating teams. And we, as Art said, we attacked, and it was very enjoyable. But it showed at the end of the season, because in the last couple of months, we burnt out completely. And you could tell the players were absolutely spent. And he's learned that. He's learned that Man City do things in a very specific way. They do not go gung-ho from the get-go, because when does it really count? The end of the season. And I think it's a slow burn, and I don't mind that. I think that's actually a good thing. We have gone through games where we are winning, but not necessarily playing well. And I don't mind that at the moment, because as you ramp up, you want to start playing better. And I'm sure it will. To Art's point, I think we will start to see more attacking play. I don't expect to see it right now, because I still think there's a build-up. I think injuries as well are compounding the problem. But it's much more pragmatic, much more intelligent, much more clever in how we approach a game. And I think Man City was a perfect example that in the microcosm of a game, as we've talked about, it's always a chess match with City. They make a move, you make a move. And we played that really well. To the credit of, for example, the defenders. Haaland got a 0.0 XG. That is absolutely rare. And that comes down to clever movement, excellent defenders who we've got, Gabriel and Saliba, we can go on and on about them. But it's clever work in terms of the defense. We used our substitutes well. We used the squad well. Jorginho actually was a masterstroke. I know he got booked in the start of the game, but I thought he was actually really well placed in that game to be the controller, allow Declan Rice to move forward and intercept the balls. So really mature. I like this from Arsenal at the moment. I miss the attacking players, as Art has said, but I know what the reason. I got the inkling of what the reason is that we're trying to build up and trying to have it's a marathon, not a sprint, which is what we should be aiming at, especially with the Champions League as well.
100%. And what's Mikel Arteta been like in his press conferences this season? Because quite a lot's been questioned about him. You think about formations early on in the season, playing that Partey right back experiment, styles of play, being too emotional. Does he get quite defensive sometimes? I know he can be a little bit depending what mood he's in, but has he been quite defensive when questioned about these things this season?
Yeah, I think the one point where he's probably been the most defensive is the goalkeeper situation with Aaron Ramsdale and David Raya. And you can see it, I guess, the way he talks now compared to last season. He tends to go into a lot more, almost like soliloquies to explain his rationale. And to be fair, I think that, little change in his, outward personality, we'd call it, is something that people have probably been waiting for, because I think that is probably better than having someone who's just going to kind of straight back question and say, I did it because I wanted to do it like that. Because when you actually, I guess, get their version or their take on things, it then makes their decisions make a bit more sense. So with David Raya, one of my colleagues, Guillermo Rai, actually interviewed him during the international break when he was away with Spain. And he asked him about the Manchester City game and the whole kind of taking 20, 25, 30 seconds on the ball. And he was able to explain it's because if I'm patient enough, an opposition striker will jump and he is the free man. The goalkeeper's the free man. So when a player jumps to him, there's now a free man in the outfield that he can look for. And I think you saw it with, I guess, the Kovacic foul on Declan Rice, because he becomes the free man. So I think that's quite helpful when, I guess, managers and players are able to explain the thought behind their processes. In other terms, I think he's got a bit more, just a bit more human in some press conferences, because I know people like who would like watch into the live streams of the presses may seem like, or may feel like some of those are quite stale. They have been, like, last season, especially when it kind of ramped up to that busy period towards the end of the season. But so far, I think there's been a little bit of an improvement in terms of just how he deals with that scenario. But of course, there's the flip side of when you come to team news and stuff like that, he's never gonna say
just
anything.
straight up lying, basically.
No comment.
I quite like that. It's the intrigue. You know, everyone's guessing what the team is going to be per game. You know, and then he pulls out something. You're like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
You know, it's
Do you think
roulette.
do you think it's because Arsenal have almost been a little bit annoyed at some of the team news leaks at all? I mean, don't worry if you can't get into it or you're not sure, but do you think maybe it's just a reaction to some of the leaks in the team news? Because there's been some talk that, you know, Arsenal haven't been overly happy with some of that stuff.
Well, on that, no club would be happy with that. I just think it's more kind of an Arteta kind of, personally, he just doesn't want to, I guess, divulge anything before the game even gets underway, because it gives others an advantage. Like,
Sure.
It's been going on for about a year now, I'd say. I remember it before Manchester United away last season, where I think it was Zinchenko, Ramsdale, and there might have been another player who were considered doubts for the game, and they all started and played 90 minutes, I'm sure. So, yeah, it's probably part of the mind games that people were a bit more used to when it was, say, Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho, and Arsene Wenger. You can include in that in the Premier League, which I don't think is as common nowadays.
Sure, yeah. On that tactical thing, though, just going back to what you said about, you know, David Raya and Arsenal fans maybe not being happy. I just thought I'd share that Southampton Football Club, obviously I work for the BBC down south, and we cover Southampton, and they actually held an event last night at the stadium because the fans have just been up in arms about the style of football, the way they've been playing. And they've actually held an event for the manager, Russell Martin, to sit in front of fans. You could buy tickets to the event and almost justify why they play football like they do and how they're going to do it. So, you know, something like that is pretty unheard of, I'd say. But I don't see Mikel Arteta sitting down to do one of them anytime soon in the Emirates in one of the lounges. But let's get into the Chelsea preview. Yeah, I'll come to you first on this one. You know, last season against Chelsea, it was pretty good. I mean, two different circumstances. I know Arsenal hit a pretty rough period in the home game, and they weren't necessarily playing the best football. I can't remember exactly, but I think they'd lost a game or something before. And, you know, it was almost like getting back on your feet, and you know, it wasn't the best game, but they came out with the win in the end. You know, more of the same, please, on Saturday, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't care. Look, if we win 1-0, I don't care. 3 points is all I care about at the moment. It's about, look, we're in a we know what we're in. Last season told us every point counts. if we'd beaten City, one win would have taken us to the title because it's a 6-point swing. Every point is crucial. I do not care how we win this. I'd love to see free-flowing attacking football. That would be fantastic. But if we win 1-0, doesn't matter. A win is a win, and it doesn't, we move on. 1-0 last year at Chelsea, I thought we played really well. To your point, Dan, the 3-1 was off the back of, a series of losses, and we were a bit down on confidence, and it gave us a really big boost. Unfortunately, as I said at the outset, we were pretty much spent at that point. I think it was just one of those things where Chelsea were pretty abysmal at that point, and we were going to win regardless because we still had too much quality. But I think tomorrow is a different story in terms of where the teams are, not in terms of their project, but more in terms of, as Art said, the confidence of each team, given the recent results. We're unbeaten. We've come off a great win against Man City, which we've had that bugbear on our back for a while. So we should be full of confidence. Likewise, Chelsea have started scoring. Granted, it is against Burnley and against Fulham, etc. So we should, we can't take them lightly, but our record recently is pretty good. So we should be confident in that we have not the edge, but we've done well. There should be no psychological barrier. Oh, we're at Stamford Bridge. Oh, it's a terrible stadium. Before, a couple of years ago, you'd have said that in the Mourinho era. And, when we were terrible, then you would have said, yeah, that's a bogey ground. It's not really now, is it? It's, we've done all right recently there.
Yeah, and I mean, Arsenal have almost early on in the season looked better away from home than at home. So do you almost feel a little bit more confident that, the Arsenal side that goes out there on Saturday will be a more compact and, maybe well-drilled side than, you'd just be more confident away from home than home potentially?
Yeah, it is a really interesting point because correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Arsenal have conceded away from home.
Yeah, we haven't conceded.
Yeah.
And I think it's a weird psychological thing because maybe it's just the fact that you're a bit more focused. You have to be wired in from minute one, whereas at home you kind of have this fanfare going about from even before kickoff. You've got everyone kind of on your side before the game. All the, I guess, announcements are for you. Everyone's cheering your name at the Emirates. I'm not having a dig at the song or whatever, but you've got the anthem before the game now.
You've got the comfort kind of that home comforts.
Yeah, so you're kind of like, it takes the edge off a little bit, I'd say. Whereas when you're away, there are just less distractions for you. But in terms of how Arsenal just like approach games away from home, I also feel like they know how to get through those games now. I remember if we look even 2 seasons ago, games at Newcastle, Crystal Palace were really tough because you get drawn into the occasion. Whereas last year, I felt Arsenal did really well in almost shutting the home crowd up, and then we play our football. And I think that's the key. You saw it in the game at Stamford Bridge last year where, honestly, it could have been 3-0. It really could have been. But 1-0 was fine on the day. So, yeah, I'm quite almost just assured that there will be a solid enough performance to merit a result. Whether they get the result, again, not in my hands. But I'm quite comfortable with the thought of Arsenal going away from home to Chelsea.
And I mean, we can enjoy this next bit because I did want to talk about, where it's gone wrong for Chelsea. I mean, I know you'll probably enjoy this bit. If you want to enjoy it, feel free to. I know you've got to remain neutral, but Chelsea have really, really struggled last season, finishing 12th. They've not got off to the best of starts this season. Granted, they had that good result against Burnley last time out, but yeah, where's it gone wrong for Chelsea? They've spent a ridiculous amount of money, which we will go on to shortly, but just for you, where's it gone wrong?
Well, there's a lot of upheaval in the Chelsea world. Effectively, you're talking about new ownership, different styles. Abramovich was very hands off. Let his football people do it. Graniskaiva, Buck, etc. do the work. So he was very abstracted from that, and he just pumped the money in. So they had a very different way of going about things. Slow build, and then into the machine that they were. With Todd Boehly, there's a lot more pressure on Todd Boehly because obviously it is with an equity fund. It's Clearlake Capital, etc., all their partners. And in that world, you're thinking about instant. How do we get instant results? How do we make sure our investment is doing the work it does? And his eyes is probably spend the money. It will come good in the end because of the sponsorships, etc., and the prizes for winning are much, will come from that gratification. And the obvious solution is to buy new players and, get the players who they assume will bring them success. Now, the problem is that I think they've overpaid for a number of players. I will point to Enzo, who is a great player, but he's not worth 120 million. In no one's eyes is he worth that. They've overpaid for that. They are now, they're looking, 100 million for Mudryk. I think they've had some bad advisements on players in terms of the valuations. I think they've got a decent enough strategy, and they're trying to get young players for longevity, and they're going to try and go that route. Whether it sticks, because if Chelsea go down this route of I want to buy the next big shiny thing, there's talk of they want to go for Ivan Toney, they need a striker, etc. Then I think there's going to be disruptions in the Chelsea squad, and you're still going to have this problem.
Well, they've just signed Nicholas Jackson, haven't they?
They signed Nicholas Jackson. They got they got Broha there. They've got players who they need to give game time to, because if you're not, then you go the other route of getting experienced players who will, get you to what you want. But Chelsea have gone the other way. So we need to see Chelsea's strategy bed in for a couple of years. And at the moment, I don't see it yet. Pochettino's a good manager. He's got good experience. Where does he go? Is he going to be supported properly? Is he going to get the players he wants? Is he going to get the direction he wants? Is he going to get the time that he wants? Because, again, they're funded by Clearlake. It's an investment vehicle. They want some kind of financial return. I doubt they're going to be like Abramovich, where it was a personal thing, where he pumped his money in and was happy to take the losses. At some point, they can't accept that. They have to get some return on it. But they are a good team. Look, they've bought well. They've bought some good players. Enzo, expensive, but is a good player. They've got some good youth players. So they should have no excuses. And I still struggle with they've spent £1 billion in a very short space of time. We talk about Man City and Man United over a period of years have spent £1 billion. And yet Chelsea have done it in 2 seasons, spent £1 billion. And no one is questioning them about why have you spent that much, and they should be netting better results than they should be, to be honest. So I would have expected more pressure on on Pochettino, etc., given the talent and the money spent. But I think they're going to give him maybe another season. They're going to see how it beds down. This season, I don't know. Is it going to be a transitional year? Art can probably say better, but I think they'll probably get to a European place, given that there is a much more, 5th place will net you into the Champions League. I don't think they'll get that. But they probably will get to the Europa Leagues or maybe the Conference League, because there is a lot of quality in that squad. And I just feel that they're going to grow in this season. Pochettino's good at motivating players. They'll grow, and I think they still have hiccups. I think this is very transitional. It's kind of like the first year of Arteta. Very transitional. But will they get the time? That's the big question for me. I'm not sure how much time the board are going to give them.
Yeah, you can say it's similar to Arteta, but let's talk about it. Money spent just in the last window alone. This graphic here, courtesy of Goal, £440.5 million spent over the summer. You can look at some of those players there. Cole Palmer going for 40 million. I know he scored an absolute worldie in the Community Shield. That probably added about 25 million to his price tag. But, some of the money they've spent is just absolutely bizarre. Art, do you think it's just a case of when rather than if, with Chelsea under Pochettino? Because we all know Pochettino is a good manager. He's someone that's got a proven track record. You can't really take much from what he did at PSG, because managing the superstars that you've got there, it's always going to end a certain way. But what's your take on this Chelsea side and the project there?
Yeah, my instinct would be to lean more towards when. As Yem said, like it does feel very reminiscent of it does feel very reminiscent of what was happening at Arsenal in that 2020 to 2022 kind of period, where if you look at Chelsea's games so far, there have been some like dreadful performances, like Bournemouth. I remember watching that game and just thinking, wow, this is on Super Sunday. What is going on? and there have been other performances where you see they're actually creating some good chances, and it's almost okay if one player's shot goes 2 meters one other side of the post, then they may be further up the table than they currently are. So for me, I do think there'll probably be a time in the season where something clicks. Maybe that point's already come with the more recent results. But when you look at the players there, I actually really do like Cole Palmer. I think he's a really good footballer. And then you've got players like Romeo Lavia, who's just got injured. So then you've got other factors like luck that come into it as well. But I do feel like they'll be fine. It is just that time that's the biggest factor, and whether Pochettino gets a lot of it.
I mean, yeah, 100%. That's pretty much. I mean, myself and Yem were speaking off air before you came on, Art, and we just kind of said it's about, these players. They've got a really good base of players, and it's just about having the consistency. And when you've got all these injuries, it's not ideal. And Romeo Lavia, I watched every game he played last season for Southampton. Incredible player. Just injuries and the one thing holding him back. And you think when they've got a midfield of Caicedo, Lavia, and Enzo Fernandez, if you play that, over most of your games in a season, eventually it's going to come good. Like it's kind of nailed on.
I think one of the biggest one for me, the big one I think that will change their game is Nkunku coming back. That was a horrible injury, and he is such a good player. I've watched him, a couple of times, and I think he's a really good link man. And I think him being back in the side could probably change their, the way that they go forward. I think that right now having Gallagher, I think, is there at the moment. He's not the level. He's a different kind of player to Nkunku. No disrespect to him, but he's a workhorse. He's not going to be as creative a force as Nkunku or as good in the box in terms of his goal, his goal returns, etc. I think that's a big one. If you can get fit Nkunku back, that changes the level at which you can operate.
When's he due back, Yem? Or Art, do you know?
I think it's New Year, isn't it? I think it's a New Year, isn't it?
Yeah, it would probably be around then with that time period.
But his biggest problem, he has been, like most of the Chelsea, he's had a lot of injuries, and they've been pretty horrific ones. I think a lot of these players have had, quite a checkered injury record. Caicedo's had one, Lavia, as you said, had one. Cole Palmer's even, Desassi's had, Nicholas Jackson. He's got an injury at the moment. I think he's got a wrist problem, hasn't he? At the moment, he's fractured his wrist or something like that. So he's done something there. So these are young players who have got growth spurts, and we saw it with the ESR. These players will have problems as their body adjusts. Even there was a piece about how Haaland has changed. From a very shorter, quicker, mobile across the ring up to more of a lolloping style now. Players change and how they grow into it. So it's going to be there's going to be tests for these players because there's going to be injuries. There's no doubt about it. Every team has injuries, but the scale of the injuries is what's going to dictate how well Chelsea do, and also the patience as well. Because if someone like Lavia is not fit for the year, then you have to say, are we going to actually play him? And do we have the patience, or do we just sell him on? Because we're in a risk and reward type scenario.
Sure, yeah, and also I didn't realise until I saw this how much Southampton actually got for Romeo Lavia. I didn't realise it was closer to 60 than 50, but I think there might have been some sort of potentially a sell-on.
There's a lot of add-on. Remember, there's a load of add-ons in all of these players. Like the Mudryk deal was like ridiculously add-on. It's crazy.
All these What do you make of? I did just want to ask you, Art. What do you make of all these players signing like 7-8 year contracts? Do you think that's something for the future, or just crazy and stupid?
I think it's more just the Chelsea thing. It's not just been happening this summer, and I know that's their kind of slogan.
It's a Chelsea thing, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it happening in like just widespread across the Premier League, because it is something Chelsea have done for the last couple of years.
It's very baseball. It's very baseball, isn't it? It's very long-term baseball kind of thing, which is obviously Todd Bowley's MO. He is a baseball.
Yeah, I know Jared Bowen signed a new deal with West Ham, which runs until 2030. So there is another example there, but I just don't think, me personally, look at it from a player's perspective, I don't see how that is desirable, because you never know where your career is going to take you in the next, say, 2, 3, 4 years. That's why if we talk about Arsenal contracts, and we saw Bukayo Saka and William Saliba both signed 4-year deals, but without an option, people were like, why haven't they put an option in there? But if you look at it from a personal perspective, they need to almost make Arsenal honest as well. So I personally am not turning my nose up at either of them not putting a year's option in there, because at the end of the day, it's your career, and you're going to have to almost have a two-way relationship to make anything work. So, yeah, I'm not really sure about the 8 years.
But that was also to get around. That was also to get around, the whole, the amortization, we call it. But that's been the loophole's being closed by FIFA. So I don't know if they're going to do an 8-year necessarily anymore, because obviously they spread the cost over 8 years. Even Caicedo's one was over 8 years almost. But going forward, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. I think they still will have some long contracts, because I think they want to ensure players are, signed up for the long term, because they're young players. But to Art's point, some of these players, could improve massively. If you take, for example, Cole Palmer could really become, like a massive player, England caps, etc. Then he may say, hold on, I'm not getting paid my worth. Bukayo Saka's salary has jumped up from, what was it, 30,000 a week to 230-ish. That's big money for a player. And if you can't get that because you're locked into a contract, that changes your perspective. And I think if it doesn't work out, down the line, you're going to have some pretty disgruntled players coming forward, saying, why have you kept me for this? I can't do this. You're not paying me my worth. And, Chelsea will say, well, you signed an 8-year contract. You should be happy with what you got.
It's an interesting point, and we'll wait and see. I don't think Arsenal will be, taking up the stance of signing players to 8-year deals anytime soon. But just quickly, Yem, is there a danger of Arsenal underestimating Chelsea at the weekend, or do you think that's just, from maybe a supporter point of view, there's no way Arteta will be, letting his players even for a second think Chelsea will be an easy game?
I don't think Arteta will be allowing the players to think this is an easy game. I don't think so. I think fans are naturally saying, oh, we're going to slap Chelsea, etc. I've seen it all over Twitter. I think Arteta knows Chelsea are a danger. He knows Pochettino very well. They were teammates at PSG. He knows him very well. He knows the team. He'd be a fool. No, everyone can see there is something growing at Chelsea. It's not where it is, no one knows. But you'd be a fool to underestimate Chelsea. You'd be a fool to take it lightly. And I don't think Arteta ever does with any team. I really don't think so. I think there are mental moments in the game. I think the Fulham game was a perfect example. There was mental issues there. And I've said the Man City game was good because there was mental concentration, mental focus. Every game now has to be the same. And to Art's point earlier, when you're away, it's a little easier to be that mentally focused, because you don't have the fanfare around you. You don't have the noise, and you don't get sucked into it. You stay very focused. But I think as well, the players have changed. They are very focused. And I don't think there'll be any sense of underestimating a Chelsea side. They're still very dangerous. This is a big game. No matter where Chelsea are placed, it's a London derby. It's, one of the they're not big six at the moment, but they are considered in terms of stature one of the big six. You can't discount them. So I think I'd be very surprised if Arteta took it lightly. And we can talk about, the formation, kind of dovetailing into that. But I'd be very, very surprised if the players didn't focus fully on this and 100% focus mentally.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Yem and Art, we will finish a little bit shortly with your score predictions. So get them ready in your head. I'm expecting some, big score lines, hopefully, even though what Yem's just said. But, just before we get to score predictions, how big is it, Art, that Arsenal have got, so many players rested during this international period? Bukayo Saka, the poor guy just looked like he needed a rest, all this talk about could he make Manchester City, ultimately didn't need him in the end because, Gabriel Jesus had a really good game, I thought, on that right-hand side. But, Martinelli came on for 45 minutes. Both these players, Arsenal's wide players, have had, a nice long rest for this game. How much of a key point do you think it will be that, they'll have these fresh legs ready to go against a Chelsea side and, you can attack them from minute one with this pace and directness down the wings?
Yeah, I don't know where Saka is at in terms of fitness, but you'd expect Martinelli to definitely be in contention to hopefully start after his performance against Manchester City. And one thing I'd say is, okay, if it's unfortunate enough that Saka isn't available, yes, Gabriel Jesus played well off the right, but I'd love to see Reece Nelson start there. I
On the right?
I really like
Okay.
the idea of a right foot on the right side. And I felt Gabriel Jesus doing that almost allowed Arsenal to stretch the pitch a bit more and just use him in a different way to, say, Saka, who I know Saka can go on his right foot, but I just felt like that threat was a little bit more different. So if Saka wasn't available, I'd like to see maybe Jesus through the middle and Nelson off the right. If Saka is available, then obviously he starts. But in terms of fresh legs, I think October's usually a really big month. And then obviously bleeding into November, you have the Champions League and also the next round of the Carabao Cup to worry about too. So I think, just making use of these guys as best as possible is going to be the biggest factor over the next few weeks, because you're not, well, I say this, but you never know with Mikel Arteta, you're not going to be able to use them for 90 minutes every 3 days. So, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. Yem, it's been great to have you there. Yem, just any few final thoughts before the game, looking ahead to Chelsea?
I think the midfield is going to be a really key battleground because you got on one side Enzo, Caicedo, Gallagher. Enzo Caicedo, very, very good. Enzo has grown. Caicedo's still trying to find his way within the Chelsea squad. Gallagher, I'm still undecided. Is he a good player or is he that level of Chelsea? I'm not too sure. I think at Crystal Palace he was fantastic. He really did elevate them. But for me, the hardest part in our midfield is Kai Havertz or that left 8 role, because you want him to grow into that midfield, because I can see what Mikel's trying to do. He's trying to get him back to that Bayer Leverkusen style attacking 8, coming late into the box. But is this the game to do it? If you look at the Man City game, he went 2 defensive. He had a pivot effectively, the Declan Rice moving forward, and then you had Ødegaard. I still think for a big game like this, and it is still a big game, as I said, he probably will stick with that. But will it be Jorginho or Partey? This is the other fact. This is the other player we have to talk about. Thomas Partey being fit actually adds a conundrum, because Jorginho did really well, and I can see him being dropped into this game to be a controller. But Thomas Partey and Declan Rice, Ødegaard is something that we've all wanted to see. We only got
midfield, I think.
It's
strongest midfield on paper,
For me, the permutations of that midfield could be massive, because Declan Rice is so good. He can play the 6. He's absolutely fantastic as a 6. But as an 8 as well, he's got so many, attributes that could lend himself to getting forward, really progressing. He's a great progressor of the ball, and he could be even, with someone behind him, he's free to go and do that. And Thomas Partey, with all due respect to Jorginho, has a bit more mobility. Jorginho is Jorginho. You know, great passer, but can't run for the life of him. He's slower than the ref usually. You know, bless him. But you kind of want that midfield to stranglehold Chelsea and really, because you know Caicedo and Enzo will try and affect that midfield. That's where they've had a lot of joy this season. They've strangleholded the midfield and they've brought it forward. If you can play, you know, depending on if Saka's fit, etc., you've got Martinelli, Ødegaard, and Saka, Jesus, and Nketiah, you know, whatever formation, then it really does allow you to have that solid base where you can attack them, to Art's point earlier, with 5 attacking players. The other permutation, which I haven't thought about, which I do like as well, is Kai Havertz in the 9, because he does offer, you know, you saw it at the end of the Man City game. He was a you know, he's a destructive force within that front line. And Chelsea's defense is that gettable for me. You know, you look at Thiago Silva, great defender, but he is getting on in years. He's not as mobile and not as, you know, can cover the ground. You've got Disasi, who is, I'm still out on Disasi. I've seen him and I like bits of him, but everyone says he's got pace. I don't see it. I think he's quite slow at points, and he has these brain fart moments, which, you know, he loses himself. So I don't know. And if they play 3 defenders or 2, you don't know. But Kai Havertz to me is an interesting one, because you could play, you know, Jesus, if Saka is not fit, on the right. I know Art said he preferred Rings, but Jesus in that last game, you know, he was tearing that side up. All he lacked was a goal, and he had so many chances to do that. But, you know, Martinelli on the other side, and then you've got this destroying Havertz who can hold up the ball, make space, make clever runs. It's interesting. And I like what Arteta's done this season in the players that he's bought. He's bought unpredictability, because we don't know how he's going to play it, because he, you know, that midfield could change to an, you know, Havertz, etc. Havertz, Partey, you know, Rice and Ødegaard. Then it becomes a bit more attacking, and then do you wonder about, is Rice going to be able to handle the 2 holding midfielders? It's really, this is why we don't want the league. This is why Arteta doesn't want the leagues, because he wants the unpredictability. He wants teams not to know how he's going to play it. The other question I have, Zinchenko, to me, you know, Zinchenko versus Sterling does scare me just a slight bit, because Sterling is still a really good player, and Zinchenko defensively, controlling wise, as a midfielder, you know, coming into that inverting, love him. But as a defender, I do worry about him on occasions.
Bit, yeah.
He does worry me. So it's really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking for the team sheet is always a funny one, when it, you know, you've got these accounts saying, oh, well, this player's not there, and I've just been to the training ground. Oh, he's not there. He's not there. Everyone panic. He's not there. You know, like the Saka one. Will he make it? The whole week was, is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? Oh, yes, he's going to make it. He's trained really hard and he's available. And then all of a sudden he didn't make it. We've got this now. It's like a little bit of entertainment in itself, you know, who's got the team news and who's doing it, you know, and then you get to it and it's completely different from what's expected. And then the big accounts say, well, yeah, I knew that all along, you know, we just didn't put it out there just to help the team along. BS. So BS. You didn't know and you took a stab at it. That's all you did.
That's why you don't trust it, and you don't need to be emotionally attached until the team sheet comes out an hour before. Yeah, it's been great to have you there. Art, you know, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Before we go to the score predictions, what have you got coming up for, you know, yourself content wise? What can people look out for? Of course, I know plenty of people, of course, I'm sure already know where to find you, but what can people expect to see content wise from you hopefully soon?
I may need to act a bit coy on this one, if that's okay.
No problem.
I'd prefer not to speak on that one.
Okay.
He's got the Arteta around, hasn't he? He's got Arteta around.
But you're going to be at Stamford Bridge. You're going to be at Stamford Bridge for the game?
James and Nicholas is there for us. I'll be doing like a live reaction from it. So on the whistle type stuff. So yeah, hopefully it goes well. And yeah, other than that, just more Arsenal stuff, really. So yeah, hopefully things pick up where they left off from before the break, and yeah, hopefully it's all good.
Great stuff. And can I push you for a score prediction for Saturday's game?
I'll go 2-0 Arsenal.
2-0 Arsenal.
I still feel like I'm confident in that defense. The one thing I guess now I'm wondering whether you'd be smart to go with Tomiyasu left back because he's done really well, not just defensively, but actually he's looked really encouraging coming inside as well. But yeah, I think 2-0. I'm quite at peace with where the defense is at, and I also feel like there'll be some chances that can be taken advantage of.
For sure, 100%, and hopefully another big masterclass for William Saliba. I mean, I know we haven't mentioned him, and we won't go into him, but just huge, incredible. He's been this season so far, and Gabriel
and he's
too.
rested as well. Well,
Yeah.
this is the thing; he's got his toe injury, so the assumption is he will make it. But he played, didn't he? He played with an injection, didn't he? And he still was the best player on the pitch by a mile.
Yeah.
It's crazy how what he could be if we keep him, for those 4 years and beyond.
Incredible. And he's the same age as me, and he looks like an absolute mountain compared to me.
When you see him live, it is scary how
He's
massive
huge.
Declan Rice is. What you know? I didn't realize how big Declan Rice is until you actually see him. We're actually a big team now, and I love it. That. Do you know what? That's another thing. Set pieces this weekend could be a nice little. We haven't had too many set piece goals, even though we were the highest last year. We're due a Gabriel, a nice little header into the corner, just standard stuff. Let's get back to it. Nikola Jova on the touchline, no handshakes, none of this stuff.
Shake your hand.
No, Cole, But I'm going to go with my score prediction. I'm going to go with a 2-1.
2-1.
The reason is that I still feel Chelsea will knock on the door enough. They've got Nicholas Jackson, who I actually think a little bit more refinement could be an excellent striker. His shooting is god awful. It's like
I remember the
Javinho
Bournemouth game when he sent one up into he sent one like probably as far away from the goal as possibly.
Do you remember Javinho had all the talent in the world, could slide through every player and could get to the goal. Once he's on goal, it's like, oh geez, are you actually going to be able to? And he's literally in front of the goal, and all you need to do is just tap it in, but he couldn't handle it. His legs just fell apart at that point. So Nicholas Jackson. I'm going for 2-1, and I think I'm going with the set piece goal. I think a nice little Gabriel header, and I think Martinelli. I think Martinelli is kind of the bane of Chelsea, and they've got the big question is Chelsea's injuries as well. Chelsea, Reece James, there's a little bit of is he going to make it or not? He's trained apparently. Social media accounts are saying he's had a setback. They've got I can't say his name. Chukwuemeka, is that correct? Chukwuemeka, he's out as well. They've got, Jackson's got a wrist injury. So, they've got about 10 injuries, which is big. It's a big thing. So if we can't take advantage of it with a fully fit squad, then you do have to say, where are we, after that Man City game, where have we gone? So I'm still confident of a win, but we've got to be mindful of just not underestimating Chelsea, as you talked about earlier, Dan.
100%. Gentlemen, it's been great to have you here. Thank you so much. Anyone watching, please make sure to like, subscribe. If you're not following our Yeambele, you can see their Twitter or their X handles right there. So please do make sure to drop them a follow if you're not already. Thank you so much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe, like the video, and we'll catch you again very soon. Take care.